Hello and welcome back. I'm Gardener Ben and welcome along to the North Lodge Cottage Garden. The next collection of roses that I'm going to talk to you about are all of my roses that I've grown from David Austin that are absolutely perfect for growing in a pot. Every single one of these roses is going to perform absolutely beautifully for you for many different reasons, and I'm going to talk you through each one. Whether you're container gardening at height and you need them to work really hard and flower for as long as possible, or whether you need them to have a series of very specific characteristics, such as fragrance, which is really important. But the next 10 roses are absolutely fabulous for growing in a pot, as long as the pot is large enough. Now, when we're talking about container growing permanently, a rose really needs to be grown in a pot that's at least 40 to 60 centimetres across and at least 60 to 70 centimetres deep. There is a guide here on YouTube and on my Instagram of how to top dress and look after a potted rose, and you really should be paying very close attention to your watering. Wherever possible, if you're keeping a rose in a pot, make sure you have a water retaining saucer underneath of it, and you'll be surprised by just how much stress that will alleviate for your plant during the hot spells of the year. Right, let's get into it. 10 roses up for you now that are absolutely fabulous and perfect for growing in a pot. The first one is Roald Dahl. From David Austin Roses, this is a small and compact shrub rose producing these lovely true apricot blooms with bright orange buds. Roald Dahl will reach around 3.5 to 4 feet high and has really beautiful soft green foliage. This rose is really useful because it grows very well in dappled shade. So if your balcony or patio only gets sun in the morning or the afternoon, consider Roald Dahl in a pot to really add a splash of colour. Next up for you, a highly scented, beautiful rose, true yellow and very bright. This is the very lovely Country Parson. The Country Parson is a small and compact rose reaching around 3.5 to 4 feet tall and producing absolutely stunning, beautiful sherbet, very pale yellow blooms with an absolute fabulous fragrance. Do be careful with the Country Parson if you have small children or very silly-minded pets. It is covered in very tiny barbs. I've had to debarb it for this particular video today, but the Country Parson is fabulous for growing in a pot. I grow one in a pot here at North Lodge outside the summer house, where it absolutely fills that tiny patio with its beautiful aroma. The blooms vary in size, some reaching around 3.5 to 4 inches across, but most much smaller, around 1.5 to 2 inches across. This is the Country Parson, which is an absolutely fabulous rose. Its sister rose, and very closely related to it, is this one here, which is Harlow Carr. Also absolutely perfect for growing in a pot. It's a very hardy, strong and resilient little rose, which will put on one hell of a show for you. Much like the Country Parson, the one just before, you do need to be careful if you have small children or pets. The barbs on this one are particularly sharp and spiky, but this one will also take a salt wind. So if you're lucky enough to have a sea view, or you take an awful lot of wind if you're growing high up in the air, Harlow Carr is a fabulous rose for growing in a pot. This particular rose is perfect for growing in a pot if you can shuffle your pots about. Boscobel from David Austin Roses produces, in my opinion, two very distinctive flushes of flowers. One very early on in the summer, starting in late May and working its way through to the end of June. The shrub is then going to take a little bit of a break and often has a few problems with leaf drop, mould and mildew. So if you are growing it in a pot, because of its size, reaching only around 3 to 3.5 feet wide and 3 to 3.5 feet tall, making it very small and compact. If I was gardening in a pot and I had the opportunity to, I'd then move Boscobel somewhere else on the patio, just out of sight while it recovers and before it has its second flush of flowers. But it's here for growing in a pot because of its amazing fragrance. It really is. Oh, it really is very pleasant. So Boscobel makes the list for growing in a pot because of its stunning fragrance. Right. A rose up for you next, which not many people grow and not many people know about. This is the beautiful Anne Boleyn, a really lovely, soft, true pink rose producing these beautiful, saucer-shaped, very flat flowers with a really lovely eye. A really beautifully mannered, small rose, reaching only around 2.5 to 3.5 feet. It really is very small. It has lovely, flick off the top of the bud, which I really love, and that's a characteristic shared by another rose I'm going to talk to you about in a moment. But Anne Boleyn from David Austin Roses, because of its size, its repeat flowering, is absolutely perfect for container gardening and not taking up too much space at all. A rose loved by our friends across the pond now. This beautiful small compact rose from David Austin is Port Sunlight, producing these beautifully heavy rosetted flowers which open into a disc shape, virtually flat, with the petals arching back ever so slightly to the actual stem there, with this lovely bleaching out around the outside edge. Port Sunlight is perfect for growing in a pot, only reaching 3 to 3.5 feet high, repeat flowering with these lovely, really interesting buds. You can see they're bright orange with that lovely dark stripe of rich red up the sides. But Port Sunlight is absolutely ideal for growing in a container on a path or patio. It actually almost will survive very much like Roald Dahl, with only around 4 to 4.5 hours worth of direct sunlight a day. And if you can give it a little bit of a shade, it will actually stop it having any problems with black spot, mold or mildew. A new arrival with the collections this year. This one is Elizabeth, launched by David Austin in 2022. Perfect for growing in a pot. I've planted mine in a pot where I can really enjoy its multitude of different colours as the bloom ages. You can see right now that this one is just about to blow out, and I'm going to handle it really, really delicately because I need this one for another video in a minute. But this one is a stunning rose as it ages, opening much, much darker and then bleaching out to this lovely apple blossom white with this lovely yellow eye. So Elizabeth is making my top recommendations for growing in a pot. Very, very similar to Anne Boleyn, a rose that not many of you know too much about. This is the Lady Salisbury, also making the list. Small and compact. The only drawback with this particular rose is a little on the floppy side. And because the blooms are quite small, it does become quite difficult to deadhead. So what I tend to do with mine is leave them until all the flowers are faded and then cut them off all at once and take the entire stem off. But this is the Lady Salisbury. Small and compact and free flowering. She's going to work really hard all the way through the year, making it ideal for growing at height or in a small space where your roses have got to really work very hard. So this is the Lady Salisbury. Another tough and very resilient rose for you now, that if you're a little bit on the lazy side and you don't really care for things too well, this rose growing in a pot is going to reward you whatever you do to it. This stunner is Scarborough Fair. Reliably only reaching around 3 to 3.5 feet tall, this rose, much like Harlow Carr and the Country Parson, will really take some punishment. So if you're not too great at your watering, or you take an awful lot of wind in your garden or on your balcony, Scarborough Fair is still going to perform really well for you. Tough, reliable and resilient. It produces beautiful, very, very delicate, soft pink blooms with that lovely glowing bowl in the centre. A really, really interesting rose with a lovely fragrance that on a patio, terrace or balcony, you're really going to want to get up close, personal and enjoy. So this one, perfect for a pot. This one is Scarborough Fair. One rose left for you in this particular collection now. This one is, no surprise, is Estasia Vi. A beautiful rose reaching around 3.5 to 4 feet tall and flowering in such numbers it is really quite breathtaking to see. I have mine here at North Lodge in a pot very close to the garage door, where I pass dozens and dozens of times a day, and it often completely stops me in my tracks. It is absolutely stunning. Dark pink salmon blooms open with a lovely peachy yellow apricot tinge. They bleach out beautifully, really, really well, and have a very lovely fragrance. So this is the last and final rose that I would suggest you grow it in a pot. This is Estasia Vi. Don't forget, all of the roses we've talked about today have their own individual personal reviews. So please do search through the media if there's a rose that's really caught your attention and you're thinking of growing it in a container. Please make sure that container is large enough. If you need any help finding the rose review that you're looking for, either on Instagram or on YouTube, don't forget you can always leave me a comment and I'll point you in the direction of it. I hope you've enjoyed this collection. Please feel free to like, comment and share. But this is been my top recommendations of David Austin roses for growing in a pot or a container.